Hello, everyone, and welcome to 40,000 Layers. In this show, I'm Tashnal. Hello. I learned to paint a bunch of minis and hopefully get better at them. And Sheepy, aka the Wandering Inn,
hello,
teaches us about Warhammer 40k lore. So that's fun. We've been on this topic a minute, but let's talk about the Patreon. If you want to support the show, this is a scuffed intro. You can go over to
it's cool. Keep going. You're fine. Do it.
patreon.com/40,000 layers, where we already have some amazing patrons. Thank you so much for making the show possible. They are Thornlord, Mark, Particularly Money, Damned Man, Ramona, V Mushroom, Retrograde Vector, Azean, and Grey Blue One. Thank you.
Yeah.
As I said, on Patreon, there are many different posts. There are exclusive posts for patrons, an exclusive Discord channel to chat to Sheepy and I, and patrons can vote for what topic you'd like us to dive into. So moving forward, it's going to be all the races and factions, and whichever wins will have a specific like battle or character or group in that faction spoken about. So hopefully you vote for your favorites and try and get a little bit more information for me for them.
So I hate to do this, but I just had a thought.
Okay.
And it happens so rarely, I had to say it. Considering we are going to basically each month we're going to be doing two episodes, does it make a super load of sense to do like, oh, they picked the Imperium, for the faction. Let's do two Imperium episodes. So what we could do is we could do first and second in the voting each month, get the two episodes.
There you have it. Apparently that's happening.
It would make it look. It would make sense because that way it's still worth voting even if your pick isn't first.
Okay. Well then the first. Okay. Well that's what's happening moving forward apparently. But this month.
There you go.
This month we
throwing out fucking ideas randomly.
We have been and are talking about Commander Farsight, and next month we'll be talking about the Imperial Army, she says confidently. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
The Imperial Guard.
The Imperial Guard, my mistake.
My thought is we can talk about the Imperial Guard in general, and then a bit more specifically, like a few specific things.
That would be great. But as I said, this time we're going to be talking about Commander Farsight. We've already covered a decent amount of his history, and this time we're going to be fighting some stinky humans. So,
in the Gamma Clay Gulf.
Gamma Clay Gulf. Okay.
The Damocles Gulf.
You said Gamma.
I know. I said it on purpose that time. So, the Damocles Gulf Crusade.
See what I have to deal with?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously Farsight was pulled away from the orcs.
Yes. The Arkunasha war.
Given a new fight. Lost all the glory.
Next time we do like an orc episode, I may ask for you to do an outtake or blooper where you just do your best orc war. War.
No, I'll put everyone else to shame.
Okay.
Couldn't do that to y'all. So.
So, we're going to talk about the Imperium versus the Tau Empire.
Yeah.
And this is one of the first proper encounters with the Tau for the Imperium.
Did they just, we're going to get to it. Did they just see the Tau and they're like, I'm a fight? Because that's how humans are.
Well, to answer what essentially is a wait so, that's literally what we're about to talk about. This quite exactly this second.
Wow.
So the Damocles Gulf was on the edge of the Tau Empire a little ways, and was just basically like it's kind of a dangerous stellar anomaly area that was very confusing and led to death for the Tau quite often when they tried to go through it.
All right, so we don't hang out there.
They try, you know. I think, and I can't say for 100%. Actually, I'm gonna wait so myself. Because I think there might be like some warpery going on there, or yeah, relatively empty space, Eastern Fringe. It doesn't say anything about chaos or the warp or anything, so maybe they're just like a whole load of Xenos around there who just, you know, smaller races and stuff that just kind of mess them up.
They don't want to be. They can't be bothered. It's not worth it.
Yeah. But essentially, the Earthcast invented this thing called the ZFR Horizon Accelerator Engine that allowed them to go around the rough part of the Gulf, basically like circumnavigate it.
Yeah.
And within the invention of this engine, they had crossed the Gulf and begun to explore the worlds on the other side of it.
Okay.
Now, there are other people who also hadn't been over the Gulf. They had, but they hadn't really gone that far. They weren't that super interested in it. And they found a whole load of worlds there with people on them. Human people.
Oh, no.
And the person in charge of this expansion, this expedition, this etc., was an ethereal named Onva.
Onva. Okay, gonna blame him.
Yeah, all his fault to begin with. Or her, I don't know.
Their fault.
Could be him, could be her. It's unclear until I look. He. Yeah, so him. So Onva, interesting ethereal. He was basically like, look, we could go to war for these planets, but what about we integrated them? So, over decades and decades and decades, the Tau traded. They sent diplomats, and they waited. And over a long amount of time, they converted the human worlds to the Tau Empire, and they never fired a shot.
Well, that's handy, isn't it?
Very peaceful. No one died. Well, I mean, you know, obviously people die, but yeah, they just essentially became the people that the humans turned to for guidance, for leadership, for trade, you know, all of these things. The humans. There's actually a really interesting. I think it's the first book in the Caiaphas Cain series is about the Tau, and it's really cool because you get to see how they do that.
I think it's very suspicious.
It's also very suspicious, yes. And, you know, we don't like the Tau. The Tau are assholes, but then so's everyone else, so... Yeah. But it's essentially... the Imperium isn't great at looking after individual worlds. Because it's so big, it's so gigantic and unwieldy, and administering it is just a pain in the arse.
Yeah, just leave them to it. They know they have control. That's enough for the Imperium of Man.
And they do demand a tithe of you know, taxes and supplies and troops and manpower and all these things. That is, you know, when you're a governor, it's like, ugh. Screw the Imperium.
What are they giving us for these things?
What has the Imperium ever done for us? The aqueduct? So it's just a random Monty Python reference. However, even though it's like it doesn't pay that much attention to its, you know, to all of its worlds and all of its places, eventually the High Lords of Terror, the kind of rulers of the Imperium in the Emperor's inverted commas absence,
Mm.
found out that in the Timbra subsector of the Eastern Fringe, the they were no longer paying tithes, and even worse than that, the governors, the worlds were serving a Xenos race.
Uh-oh. Quick fire way to get set on fire.
Yeah, so the Imperium was like, no. And essentially sent a fucking crusade.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised at all.
Which basically started with it basically started with the Imperium turning up and continued with the Tau fighting a horrific war for quite a long time.
So, the Tau were protecting their little human friends, or did the Imperium just go, nah, we're going to get rid of the Xenos so that this planet aren't going to be rebellious anymore?
Well, I mean, if you allow planets to be like, hey, we're gonna join these guys,
Mm.
then more planets will go, hey, we're gonna join these guys. Whereas if you just destroy those guys and mess them up, they're gonna go like, well, paying some tithes isn't that bad, really. Because the other option is the entire planet becomes a war zone.
I just don't feel like it's a smart idea to take on an alien race that you have no idea about a planet that is in the far reaches that you don't really care about.
Hello and welcome to the Imperium. We hate Xenos races.
Yeah.
And if they piss us off, we stomp them.
We attempt to stomp them.
We go and give them a right good... Sorry, that's someone else. Essentially, they can't allow this type of thing to go unpunished.
Yeah. I was fully expecting just like a big old firebomb of the planet and the Tau were like, no.
Yeah.
But no, just let's fight the Tau instead.
So the way the Tau travel and expand is very different. They don't use the warp; they use technology.
Mm-hmm.
So can you imagine being like a super advanced alien race who, like, travels through space the normal way and is just like, oh, beep boop, oh, look at this, hello, hello humans, would you like to join us? And they're like, oh yes please, after a while of you seducing us, that would be lovely. And then giant fucking portals in the fabric of reality open up and giant cathedral ships just like burn through space, and they're like, hello, we're going to murder you.
Let's start a war. Like, it would be kind of freaky as a Tau.
So the first target that the Imperium was like, okay, this one needs to be dealt with, was the Daliath Sept. Lots of culture, very prosperous, doing really, really well, and had its origins in the first sphere expansion. Basically, the first time the Tau really like expanded out and took a whole load of space. The outlying colony worlds literally just fell.
They would, yeah.
The ships, the Navy, with the Space Marines basically leading them, just ripped across the whole area. The Tau weren't prepared for it because they literally just like warped in and were like, "Murder!"
Kill
and
everyone.
Yeah, they did what they could, but they didn't know each other's abilities. Like, this was one of the first time they'd really met properly in like naval space battles.
Yeah.
There was very little that the Tau ships could do against these giant behemoths of ships of the Imperium. But there was very little that the Imperium could do against the Talcroft because they were so evasive, they were so agile.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really weird fight because the Tau were dodging everything and the Imperium was absorbing everything. It was like an immovable object versus an unstoppable force type situation.
Be so annoyed. Like the Tau, I bet, looked so cross. Like they've not even done anything wrong. They just befriended some folk one time.
Imagine, hmm, well, you know, like it's easy to say that, but at the same time, they also literally just, it'd be like someone wandering into a store and being like, "Oh, this shelf is mine now. Everything on it is mine," and you're like, and you're like, "Well, the crisps really want to be part of my empire," and it's like, that's not really how that works. And also, this is my shotgun.
Imperium man it's just messed up. It's just
Yeah.
I just in the bin.
But it essentially meant that there's not much they could do to slow down the Imperium, and the Imperium knew it until they could start scrambling their larger forces with like heavier firepower and everything.
Yeah.
Which was a long way away. Essentially, the Imperial fleet literally just flew straight at the orbital defenses of the planet. And pretty much just decided that they were going to land as many troops as possible on the planet and just go for it.
Let's go! Melee range!
Commander Farsight was briefed on the whole situation and told that him and one of his fellow students. Do you remember he trained under? I can't remember the name of the Tau, but he trained under a really talented Tau commander with a few other students.
Yeah.
One of them was Osha Sarah,
Okay.
who was like a fellow student, and he was told that he was going to be joining Osha Sarah to fight the Imperium. And Farsight, maybe understandably, essentially swore that he would either cleanse the planet of these invaders or die. And that this time there would be no retreat, only victory or death.
Oh.
Yeah, you could see kind of where he came to that, like with the whole orc thing.
This time, I'm not going to have it taken away from me. I'm going to do it my damn self.
Yeah.
With my buddy.
So, one of the first things that Commander Farsight, I think, realized was that the air caste, which is essentially the Navy caste for the Tau, if you remember us talking about the different castes. Yeah. He was like, they're going to be very important in this war. So he gave a speech and addressed the air caste directly, and it was very, very praising the air caste as to how skilled they were, how patriotic, and how important they were. And one of his friends, an admiral called Kor-Oli Malteng.
Malteng, okay.
Was an admiral who essentially helped him. They got it sorted so that the pilots would counterattack the Imperium.
Yeah.
At the same time, the Imperium literally blackened the skies in their invasion of the world. Within the first week, it was literally just black clouds all over the place. Massive dropships of the Imperial Guard came down, essentially acting as aircraft carriers to begin with. So the aircraft would take off and go around in the area and start fighting, and then the transports would drop and then gorge out troops and tanks on a giant scale. There was massive fighting between the Imperial fighters and transports and the Tau. And yeah, there was mass destruction in the sky before any of the transports landed on the ground.
Just...
Essentially, the Tau scrambled all their fighters, all their bombers, all their everything, and had a massive fight in the sky. Loads of drones going around as well. And honestly, they did really well against the first the first Imperial Guard forces. The
first wave.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it kind of they hit a bit of a snag, because there were other ships that they couldn't deal with as easily. Big kind of like hulky, like bright colors and like very stubby wings, but very fast. And these were Space Marine vehicles.
Oh.
Who essentially, the aircast had like a combat formation, like a net, which they essentially like engaged the enemy with, where they'd all work together with drones and everything. It was all very organized and connected. And the Space Marines would just go straight through the center of it without stopping. And because it was so heavily armored, they couldn't really do much damage to it. So it forced them to just break the formations and going into like ridiculous evasive maneuvers. Which actually impressed Farsight. He was like, God damn, that's like direct and brave and scary and okay, yeah, sure. He actually took control of the crisis team in the area of this attack where the Space Marines were coming down, because it stood out to him.
This is an important area.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't necessarily important strategically, but it was important because whoever this group that was landing was needed to be dealt with carefully.
Yeah.
Which turned out to be really true.
Mm-hmm.
Because he, from what the data he managed to get from, early encounters, they were heavily armored, they were very aggressive. So he gathered all of the like really high-tech, quite well armored battle suits and equipped them with plasma rifles, very penetrative. Essentially, it was a brilliant idea because it was something that could penetrate Space Marine armor.
I was lucky.
Yeah. The difference is that the battle suits could pretty much hold up against the bolt shells for the most part. Obviously, they'd still penetrate, but it wasn't as much. And Farsight pretty much said, if you're in your battle suit and you get hit once or twice, you move back behind the lines, and another battle suit will replace you. So the crisis teams, the like responding to this Space Marine invasion incursion like area, would essentially engage the Space Marines. If they get hit a little bit, they move back, and another one comes forward. Whereas the Space Marines were like, it's like just charging forward, shooting, and like getting, because of the plasma rifles and because they had so many and they were just like pouring fire into the Space Marines. Like there were Space Marines marching forward with multiple holes in them, like still going.
They're like monsters, aren't they? So
yeah, like even as they're dying, they were like crawling forward with one hand and shooting with the other.
Oh, for the Emperor.
And again, it really impressed Farsight. And he saw like the Medicaes, I can't remember what they're called, the apothecaries. of the Space Marines, like running around, you know, seeing to the fallen Space Marines. Obviously, at the time, he didn't know that they were gathering the gene seed and, you know, essentially allowing them to make more Space Marines in the future. We haven't really covered that, but I'm sure we will at some point.
Witchcraft.
I was expecting wait, so the Space Marine, like they gather the gene seed and yeah.
I am pretending that I know exactly what you mean. And I kind of do. I'm assuming it's like a nice little extra organ, like an appendix that needs to be removed so they can grow a whole new little Space Marine boy.
Sure, let's say that. We'll get into how Space Marines are made. I don't know the deep details, like all of because there's a lot that goes into making a Space Marine. The one thing we probably will never talk about, at least I don't want to talk about, is how they make Chaos Space Marines.
Now I want to talk about it.
No, you really don't.
Okay. They grow in an extra appendix.
All I can tell you is, you know how we skipped over bits of what the Dark Eldar do because it's disgusting and gross and creepy. The stuff that we skipped over from the Dark Eldar, I'd prefer to talk about that than the Chaos Space Marine creation.
Okay, well, I'll let's not do that then. We'll talk about normal Space Marines. Not right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's impressed by the Medicaid, and he was impressed by them being so committed to their cause of murder, I guess.
Yeah, they still wiped out the Space Marine invasion part. And as well as they did in the sky, as well as they did in the air, they couldn't stop the Imperium landing in general.
Yeah.
And we're talking tanks, we're talking Titans, we're talking, you know, the big beastly boys of the Imperium. And even though the air is good, you know, like they're effective, they're shooting down planes and fighters and all that kind of stuff, they can't do fucking anything to a goddamn Titan. Like the void shields, it's the same thing that protects the ships, you know?
It's the same thing that protects the orcs.
Yeah. They have like very heavy armor in the Imperium on all of their vehicles. Like the Tau don't.
Yeah.
The Tau are very lightly armored because their technology is a lot better, so they don't have to heavily armor stuff. Which means that they're not, like, obviously they can, but they're not as geared up for, like, for example, fighting Titans. You've seen Titans, you know what they are. They're scary.
They're very big minis.
And they have so much firepower on a Titan and things like that when the Tau would you know, hear of like forces pushing forward, they, you know, have their air forces go to intercept, and then they'd have to run away because the Titans would just unleash everything at them. And they're like, if we get closer, we're gonna get fucking destroyed just from a lucky shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the orcs. It's very much like the orcs. The orcs, when they shoot, they shoot everywhere, and anything they hit is what they were aiming at.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They don't aim; they just hit. And it was the same in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, such barrages, it's going to hit something, isn't it? So
yeah, and the Titans really were, especially starting off, they were the anchor of every fight, because it's like the Tau battle suits, except for a god version of a battle
20 times the size.
And the Earthcasts were like, who the fuck would be crazy enough to make something like this? Like what the like we're crazy Earthcast. Like, you know, we create all this crazy shit from our technology. We've never considered making a city walk. And it's funny because the orcs have titans as well.
Did what? I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
the orc had titans.
yeah, orcs have titans. Yeah. They orc titans are very much modeled after Gork and Mork, their gods.
Oh, I have seen those.
Yeah. They're very cool.
Yeah, because it's the
And yeah, who knows how they work, to be honest, but
the orc powers. That's how.
they work because orcs.
Yeah.
As everything else in
As
the
if
universe, like anything orky works because orcs.
they believe it so.
But there was a lot of comparisons in the Tau between how the Imperium like use their titans and how the orcs use their titans.
Oh heck.
Well, because when you think about it, it's kind of true.
Hmm.
That here they had these giant crazy machines and they're just like charging forward with them, and you know, like it was the first time the Tau had much interaction with the Imperium. It kind of makes
Yeah,
sense.
but like these could definitely just be humanoid orcs.
Yeah, it's, you know, again, like the only thing scarier than all the other like Tyrannid and Orc Zerg tactics and like crazy warlike wanting to kill everything is when you look at it from the perspective of any Xenos race having to deal with the Imperium.
Yeah. The Imperium is so mean.
Yeah.
Stupid Imperium.
Um. So.
Poor Tau, minding their own business, trading with some aliens that they never met before. Everything was good, and then these fuckers show up.
And you know, like Lehman Russ tanks
Yeah.
and chimeras and all those lovely Imperial tanks that I'm sure we'll go into more detail at some point. Um, like thousands of those are just churning all over the planet, like with the soldiers, with the Titans going all over the place, and forming up into like attack formations.
Mm-hmm.
And Farsight got his hunter cadres, his soldiers ready to go off, and he was like, "You know what? I don't know what to do." like like this is an invasion on such a large scale. I like even with the orcs, I could figure something out. I'm not sure what to do here.
It's like, where do you even start when the sky is blackened and there's titans and tanks and like, what do you even do?
And by this point, through sheer bullheadedness and brute force, the Imperium had established multiple beachheads on the planet with massive losses, artillery, suppression, like anti-air. They were like scarring defensive positions where they can land more forces and keep pushing out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the first day.
That was in one day.
That was in one day.
Oh man.
So when night came, Commander Farsight called an emergency meeting of the commanders who weren't currently fighting.
Mm-hmm.
The Space Marines actually attacked a city directly, and they had to like neutralize them. And that's where Commander Farsight had gone to fight the Space Marines. But the majority of the Imperial army hadn't actually engaged yet. They'd tried to stall them with missile strikes and like advanced stealth teams and scout teams had been basically killed by the veteran Farsight troops who did that with the orcs as well.
Take out the boss men.
The difference is they hadn't really done much to the Imperium. You know, even taking out the Space Marines, even like stalling them a little bit with missile strikes and taking out their scout teams, it hadn't done anything. Like the Imperium was still there.
Just a mess.
So Farsight tried to convince the commanders and everyone, basically get everyone on the same side of the idea of just attack.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, a Tau female strode in
Mm-hmm.
and went to the command bridge with like purpose.
I'm on a mission. Okay.
Stood in front of Farsight, like basically, he was, let's say he's at the table, like pointing at stuff. She stepped in front of him between the table and all the other commanders and went, "This is my plan."
Good for her.
She wanted to have all of the Firecast in reserve join her hunter cadres and use stealth attacks in the dark to like basically use guerrilla tactics to like pull them out from their defenses and then counterattack them when they like left their defenses, like overextended type stuff.
Yeah.
She ordered all of the commanders not directly under Farsight's like group of soldiers, and they all acquiesced. They said, "Yes, we'll do what you tell us to." And that's when Shas Shacera, also known as Commander Shadowsun, left without talking to Farsight, and like over half of the commanders there went with her.
Okay.
And Commander Shadowsun was the other student I talked about.
Yeah.
And basically, the only reason Commander Farsight didn't do anything about it was because he remembered his master, Master Puretide, who taught both of them as students, basically saying, you're both very different people.
Did Shadowsun like go with the Tau lady or just walk out?
She was the Tau lady.
Right. Okay, that's fine. I was a little confused there.
No.
Yeah.
So that was the Tau lady who walked in and basically was like, "Fuck Farsight, this is what we're doing."
Good for her. Yeah.
And Commander Farsight remembered what his master, who they both trained under, said, which was that they both want the same thing. They're just different people.
Yeah.
They do things very different, and they're very, very kind of like opposed, let's say.
Farsight's had like a whole day, trying to change tactics.
And a couple of hours later, they started getting reports of devastating attacks under cover of darkness on the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Tactics very obviously Oshacera's, Commander Shadowsun's. And the giant armies of the Imperium were like, "What's happening?" Boom! And just like firing blindly and just hitting anything they could. And essentially, it was very effective. There's confusion all over the Imperium. They struck like carefully with like spear precision to destroy tanks. They brought in tank killers and smashed each vehicle as they went. Quite often the heavier tanks and the heavier like artillery and stuff would split off to deal with problems. As they turned up and they didn't they didn't know where they were going or why. You know, they were just told go this way and shoot in this position. And by the time they reacted and did, there was no one there anymore.
Yeah, Tao had already moved. We're fast. Zoom.
And with Osha Sarah infiltrating misdirection, it essentially her tactics were very, very effective against the Imperial Guard.
Yeah.
Causing a lot of death over the next couple of months. At the same time, Oshova, Commander Farsight, was quite often dealing with strike forces, the Space Marines, like jumping down and just smashing areas wherever they could. And then once they kind of committed themselves to an area, Commander Farsight would like ball in with his battle suits and essentially essentially close off the area, like kill everyone there that he could, basically neutralize the Space Marines every time they tried. Unfortunately, in the like naval war, the aircraft were taking a lot of casualties, although they did also cause a lot of casualties.
Yeah. Just not as good when the Imperium of Man has so many people.
Yeah, and it was so important that the Admiral, you know, the friend of Farsight himself, took to his fighter and was fighting like Space Marine gunships.
Yeah.
At the same time, Commander Brightsword, if you remember him,
Yep.
also excelled, like stood out very heavily. A lot of close quarter fighting, and managed to kill a skull masked leader, essentially like a Space Marine chaplain, which is quite a big deal.
Wow.
At the same time, Farsight asked one of his, I don't know if you remember him from the other planet, one of his Earthcast friends called Ovessa to start making you weapons that can deal with the heavily armored portions of the Imperium.
Great. Okay.
Which they did, and they distributed them as and when they could. Obviously, it's not that easy, but they started churning some out, essentially. Of course, it's still the Imperium. You know, like you make some headway, and then the Space Marines literally drop pod a city.
Yeah. They always have the option of just like bombing the entire Exterminatus, the entire bloody thing too, which.
Well, so you know how the Tau like their domes, their biodomes. The Space Marines dropped assault pods at such a speed that it shattered the roof of the dome.
This is unreasonable.
and blew out the atmosphere inside.
Yeah.
And then teleported Space Marines into the central plaza of the dome. And just started massacring everyone.
They're just the worst.
In such a concentrated and like bloody attack that Farsight had to pull out.
Yeah.
At which point, armored companies pushed forward, surrounded the city, and wouldn't let anyone out.
Oh.
So the Space Marines murdered shit ton of Tau in this biodome. They couldn't retreat because there was a ring of armored companies all around the biodome.
Their entire option is death.
Yeah, yeah. Um, which happened 5 more times in different cities and different biodomes
Wow.
over the course of the war. And each time it was a company of Space Marines, and they just threw them down and just fucking
Took everyone out.
And each time, Farsight, Far, pardon me, Farsight couldn't do much.
Mm.
Like it did what he could, but
Yeah, I mean,
what are you gonna do?
they've already broken the like. It's around. There's not. It's so overwhelmed. Poor baby.
And the firing protocol, essentially the targeting for anyone under Commander Farsight's command is, and this is a quote: "The fully armored humans first, then the heraldic vehicles, then the common tanks, then and only then may you engage the common infantry." It was like, kill the Space Marines, kill the Space Marines tanks, then kill the tanks, and then shoot anyone left.
It's optimistic goal, really, but
Yeah,
yeah, poor.
and this is the part where like it kind of changed both the Tau and the Imperium, because it wasn't just it wasn't just being the best fighter. They hadn't really fought each other properly before,
Mm-hmm.
and they were both realizing that they had strengths and weaknesses to be exploited. And for example, the Imperium essentially charged a Tau gun line during, it was called the Battle of Via Meshala, and they were basically outgunned, they were pinned down, and so they did what all good Imperial Guardsmen do: they charged. They took heavy casualties, but they won with bayonets and fists, essentially, because they got into close combat, and
Yeah.
the Tau can't deal with
They
that shit.
can't do it.
And so after that battle, the Imperium changed its tactics so that it wasn't just, a line of fire non-stop. They would charge into close quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Commander Farsight, being Commander Farsight, studied the Imperium non-stop, changing strategies and counterattacking, and who, like I said, with the target priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And giving out drone guidance for like seeing what's what, so like it would essentially help the commanders of all of Farsight's forces tell who was the Space Marine, who was the what vehicle it belonged to, how high on the target list it would be.
Okay, yeah, that would be.
Gonna help with that. And the Imperium basically, took the tactical manual called the Codex Astartes, written by, I believe, Codex Astartes, which is basically the military strategy and tactics written by Rabute Gilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, and used it to batter. He used it to batter the Tau whenever they could.
In melee range, it's a big old book. Poof, poof.
There's a chapter of Space Marines called the Hammers of Dawn, who were very good at figuring out what a threat, what the basically high priority targets in the Tau were.
Yeah.
And essentially responding and targeting them. Which is something that Farsight definitely took notice of, like the patterns in the Imperium's tactics.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, like he never really went like, okay, they do this, so we do this. But he had some basic, let's say, he managed to get enough information to run prototype simulations, like early simulations of how things would go, so that his commanders could train against an Imperium simulation for battles.
Yeah.
Um, One thing he noticed was that they like tanks. So he essentially ordered the construction of anti-tank battlesuits, which let the kind of, the response teams, the crisis teams, turn up really quickly, drop down, and disable or destroy as many tanks as possible with like really short range fusion blasters.
Jump in. Pew
Yeah.
pew.
And then basically like jet back up into the sky and run away.
Yeah, I think that's clever. Like, considering how advanced they have to resort to guerrilla tactics.
Yeah.
Like, more than you would hope.
Well, speaking of that, Oshacera took her troops and stayed on the dark side of the planet.
Uh-huh.
So, they rotated with the sun so that the sun was always on the other side of the planet. They were always in darkness. So that she could continue to raid and attack when the Imperium were least able to deal with it.
Yeah. Nighttime ninjas. Pew.
Which was funny because it meant that Farsight could basically like see how she was doing because he'd just essentially keep an eye on the dark side of the planet and see where the fires were.
Yeah.
And even though Farsight and Shasera were really good, or Commander Shadow Sun, I guess, they can't do everything, and they can't help everywhere.
Yeah.
One of the problems became that, unlike the orcs, the unlike the orcs, the Imperium had technology that was really solid and really old, and it had sustained the Imperium for this long for a reason. They'd been fighting non-stop, enemies from every direction for centuries, millennia. And it meant that regardless of what the Tau came up with, what environment the Imperium will put in, what tactic the Tau could come up with, or even what technology the Tau could come up with, they always worked out a strategy very quickly, like they pulled it out of their ass to deal with it.
Yeah, because they just have so much history as murdering Xenos.
A long, proud history of murder.
Yeah.
And even though they'd done so well and they're very, very effective the entire time, the Imperium took over many, many planets and killed all the Tau there.
Mm-hmm.
And then fortified they ruined a city, killed everyone in it, and then fortified it.
Yeah, they're like, this is ours now.
And the problem is that from the Tau's perspective, they were taking severe losses. It was nothing compared to the Imperium, but the Imperium didn't seem to care.
Yeah, it's just never ending.
Which meant that the Ethereals were forced to take more extreme maneuvers and measures to slow them down, to stop them, while they tried to bring in reinforcements.
It's just we're not going to win, were they? Did they win?
Well, so one of the things they did was they had experimental neurochips.
Uh-huh.
With the recorded strategies of Commander Puretide. Do you remember the master of Shadow Sun and Farsight?
Yeah.
that they surgically implanted into the minds of the Tau commander the battlesuit Tau commanders, the leaders of the cadres, all that type of stuff. That essentially allowed them all to function the same. So they would all think very similarly. They could all adapt to multiple situations. At least that was the plan. They were called the Swords of Pure Tide, and they did really, really well to begin with.
Oh.
Against the regular troopers of the Imperium. At which point the Imperium brought up their psychers.
Oh no, this is not fair. The Tau don't mess around with warp nonsense.
Which they had no experience with whatsoever. And it decimated their troops. Because the like implanted strategies had no answer to psychic powers.
To psychic nonsense.
Yeah. So, as things kept on going, and essentially the Imperium looked like they were going to, ruffle stomp. Thousands of recruits turned up.
Oh, hello.
And essentially, they were used as like a block. Wherever the Imperium broke through, the recruit would kind of like try and plug the gap.
Yeah.
Essentially, like whenever there was a breakthrough in the lines, and the Imperiums tried to like force themselves through, and like just spread out, they'd be contained by recruits and heavy fire of drones and carbines and everything, basically like stymieing the flow until either Farsight or Oshasera could turn up and essentially push them back and stop the flow. It lost them a lot of crew as well, but it was effective.
Yeah, that's sad for the crew.
Well, I mean, everyone's dying, really.
Yeah,
you just like the crew.
Sad for the crew. They're so cute.
Lovely chicken bars.
Aww.
And Farsight employed this tactic, let's call it even more, at a place called Ralatas, a dome city.
Okay.
Everyone's the best commanders are on the other side of the planet fighting the Imperium when an Imperial dropship landed a few miles from the city. Then surrounded by Imperial tanks with some heavy, super heavy, enough to like breach the walls of the city.
Yeah, this is having some flashbacks.
Yeah.
So literally every time.
There was only a small amount of fire warriors. It was mostly Kroot living there. Oh. And nothing to deal with all of those tanks. One of the fire warriors there, like commanders, let's call them, called Shaskra, essentially messaged Farsight and was like, help!
Hi, so what kind of fucked here?
And Farsight was like, I'm kind of like I got shit going on, but let me think quickly, and I'll do what I can. And like a minute later, he messaged Shaskar again, and was like, "Gather the Earth Cost." And so he did. And as the Imperials breached the walls of the city and began to work their way into the Ralatas, the city just, poof, dead, dark. And as it went dark, a massive pulse of electromagnetic force went from the center of the city outward.
Uh-huh.
Basically a giant tidal wave of EMP that scrambled all of the tanks and all the walkers and the massive squads of Kroots poured out from every like building in the city and just ran down all of the like tank crews and everything who were trying to run away. And if they didn't run away, the like doors were ripped off the tanks.
Get him. That's what you get for being behind in technology. That's clever. I like that.
And what essentially the mass of Kroot essentially killing and eating all of the Imperials.
I forgot about the eating thing. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Was broadcast over all open Tau network channels.
Oh.
Additionally, apparently, Farsight watched it a few times. Quite a few times.
Just put that on repeat in the corner. This is good for morale. Oh.
So, at this point, finally, the Imperium was losing a little momentum.
Mm-hmm.
However, half of the planet had been abandoned or was destroyed.
Yeah. Womp womp.
The Tau starting to use EMPs, like separate the Imperial armies and then slowly take them apart. Had bought enough time for reinforcements to turn up, and more Firecast armies and squads and etc. were turning up. Additionally, the Imperial Navy had to retreat because the Air Force was getting more and more ships being sent in.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for the Space Marines, their adherence to their tactics set down in the Codex Astartes eventually became the thing that defeated them.
Yeah.
Because with Commander Shadowsun and Farsight, like, looking at the tactics and dealing with them repeatedly, they essentially worked a tactic to draw the Space Marines out into a full fight with Farsight. Mm-hmm. So Farsight would like present them a big target of fighting.
Yeah, and the book says, go get it.
Yeah. And then they'd go out and they'd start the big fight, and then they'd have the strike force of Shadowsun like turn up and just be like, boom.
Surprise, bet you thought you'd seen the last of me.
And essentially by that point, the forces were spread too thin. The supply lines just weren't quite up to snuff, and the Tau were dealing well with their supply. So they weren't under threat of losing too many troops or ammunition or anything. And the astropaths basically transmitted back to the Imperium that there's like, this isn't a good thing that they did so well, because now the Imperium's like, yo, there's this big new threat. We're gonna have to deal with it.
Oh no.
And the Imperium withdrew from the planet.
Yep.
As the Imperial army started to withdraw, the Watercast turned up under the command of the Ethereals.
Better late than never.
And the Ethereals said, no, let them go.
Why?
There had been a communique between the Watercast and a captain of the Hammers of Dawn, one of the Space Marine chapters,
Mm-hmm.
basically offering and asking for a truce. And the Watercast had accepted on behalf of the Tau Empire. The Tau obviously had been taken very much by surprise, but they felt like they'd learned a lot and they'd managed to overcome the threat.
Yeah, now they know what is going on. They can prepare.
Yes. And, like, to keep in mind, like, the Imperium directly invaded Tau space.
Yeah, it's like messed up.
And they retreated not just from the planet, but from Tau space.
Mm-hmm.
They left through the warp. A crap ton of broken technology, which was recovered and studied. And it was... the funny thing is, they were like, yes, this technology is inferior and of no use to the greater good.
Right, but for the knowledge, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. Also, the Swords of Puretide, the commanders who had that crap implanted,
Yeah.
were forcibly taken out. And everyone who had the procedure essentially became brain dead.
No, they went out. They were taken out for a nice meal because they did so good.
Yes, they were taken out for a nice meal, and then they were sent up to a farm, which they live on to this day.
They just live on the farm, okay?
They run around, recruit hounds.
They're really happy.
Yeah, they're very happy.
They've got lots of space.
Which is essentially, this is the cost of victory.
Stupid Watercast. Accepting it for everyone. You don't get to make that decision. Chase them down.
And one of Farsight's commanders who works under him was called up to get his engram removed, the surgically inserted thing. He wasn't there. And when Commander Farsight was questioned about him disappearing, he told them that during the last engagement, he'd been killed and basically bombed into oblivion.
Is Captain Farsight going to be renamed Captain Liarpants?
And Captain Farsight was like, "Such is the cost of victory. Sad."
It's very sad. So sad.
And the person who came to get him to remove the engram was Ornvar, the original ethereal who turned up. Or who was in charge of the area, and they were they looked at Farsight, was like, and then and that was the engagement. That was the fight with the Imperium. They had managed to beat the Imperium at a big cost to both sides. I think the thing that the Tau didn't really consider is they didn't understand the scope of the Imperium.
Yeah.
They had this kind of feeling of being the most supreme thing in the universe. And that did get quite heavily shaken, basically.
Yeah, I think that'd do it.
But the thing that I don't think they recognized, for whatever reason, maybe they didn't even think about it, is they looked at the technology of the Imperium, and it wasn't even worth using. It was so outmoded. Their technology was so much better. And no one said to themselves, wait, if the Imperium's so much better than us, if the Imperium's technology is so much worse than us, and they're so crappy, how did we manage to get our asses kicked so badly at the start?
Yeah.
We barely beat them, and they retreated, and we let them go. We may have won, but did we? And how much, if they're willing to commit that much death on, a fucking whim, how much of them is there really out there?
I know.
Like,
That's
what
how
kind of...
it's self-absorbed, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
in denial, almost like, well, you did so well because we were surprised. Yep, definitely not because of anything else, but because we were surprised. They're not good.
During this time, the Ethereal Master, Onvar, who is the one who was in charge of the whole situation, spoke to some of the Imperial, one of the Imperial Supremes, I think, and they decided to reconquer some of places they lost, led by Oshova, led by Commander Farsight. And that is the Farsight expedition, which I think we'll probably speak about another time.
In the future. Oh, wow. Can't believe it's been an hour already. Like, we just powered through that.
Yeah. We managed to... I was worried that we weren't going to get through all of that, the Damocles stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot, though.
Yeah. Obviously, like, it's weird to say, seeing as we just spent an hour talking about it. Left a lot of the details out, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, considering we've just done two Tau episodes, mostly just speaking about Commander Farsight and, you know, the Tau kind of in general, but mostly to Commander Farsight and his fights and his trials and tribulations. How you feeling on the Tau and specifically Commander Farsight?
I feel like they are going to be severely humbled. Either it's already happened and I just don't know about it, or it needs to happen. They seem quite, like, arrogant, obviously, and willfully in denial about how much they were beaten.
Yeah.
I do feel kind of bad. Like, I mean, the Imperium man is way harsh. It's a slight
It's so
escalation.
scary, isn't it?
Like, it's a big escalation from the Imperium's planet doesn't want to do tides, to that being the Tau's fault, to that being we're going to go to Tau space and, you know, invade and destroy one of their inner core planets. Like, that is a massive escalation. It's kind of feel bad for them in that way. But
when you see the Imperium from the perspective of a Xeno story like the Tau, you're like that could easily be made into a film, not dissimilar from Independence Day.
Yeah, and it
and the Imperium would be the bad guy aliens who just invade the planet and just fuck everything up.
How interesting would it be though? It's like turning it on the head a little bit.
No,
Right?
When I said it, I was like, I'd watch that.
Yeah.
That'd be so cool. That'd be such a cool film.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about District 9 as well. But you do kind of feel bad for... I feel bad for Farsight that he was taken away from his little orc campaign.
Yeah, he did so well, and then he just kind of got reassigned, and it was like, yeah, we're going to retreat.
I'm just going to take this away from you, okay?
We're going to come back later and do it ourselves.
And I'm glad that he was able to have a sort of victory with his fellow pupil, but...
Is there a little bit of foreshadowing for you, though?
I'm concerned for him.
Yeah.
And telling lies. Oh.
I mean, did he lie? I never said what happened.
I feel like he lied.
Yeah. It's got that kind of vibe, doesn't it?
It's like, yeah, my commander definitely 100% definitely got blown up, so there's no trace of him.
Price of battle, like you said.
Like you said, it's very good, etc. Okay, I just need to go to the Cayman Islands because no reason. Definitely not setting up my commander over there. Why would you think that? That's so weird.
Well, am I transferring money to a fund called Still Alive Commanders who I've said are dead? Who knows? It's just what, talk to my accountant. He's that guy who looks like my commander, but he has a fake mustache on. And then he's just sitting there like, yes, well,
yes,
it's a tax. It's a tax thing, all perfectly legal.
It's perfectly fine. Very good, you know. Oh yeah, but I would like to know some more.
Oh god. And then, like, as the Ethereal's like questioning him, his mustache slips off. And they're both sitting there like in stunned silence, and then the door opens and it's this like shiny kind of figure with like a couple of pizzas in his hand. He's just like, ooh, awkward.
Awkward.
I think I came at exactly the wrong moment again. Hi, I'm Steve.
Bloody Steve.
I'm a Necrontyr, and I brought some friends with me. They wanted to find your planet.
Oh no.
They're just the Tyranids.
Tyranids. Oh, I love this little universe. Did he bring the coffee though?
Oh, could you imagine? Right, I just thought of something,
Mm-hmm.
and I swear we'll end the episode in a second, guys.
No, we won't. Don't lie.
Can you imagine if this whole story of 40k was Steve working as a pizza delivery boy, and Zinch and his frat boyfriend, his frat boy brothers, do a prank call on him to order a pizza and give him the wrong address.
Oh my goodness.
He's spent the entirety of existence trying to find where he's supposed to deliver this pizza. Keeps turning up at the wrong place at the wrong time and like leading the Tyranids to the galaxy. All this shit. And he's literally just trying to find where to deliver the pizza to see.
Hey, Imperium of Man, did you know, do you know where the tower are? Because, I need to deliver this pizza.
And they're like, oh, we've never heard of the Tau, but we're actually looking for something in the area. Do you mind if we follow you?
Yeah.
It's like, no, come along. They're around here somewhere. Don't worry, we'll find it.
We like pizza. Yeah, we'll come with you. No big deal.
And he's like, sorry guys, I just have to stop for a second to talk to this. But you guys go ahead. I'll catch up. And then he turns up with the pizza. Like a couple of months later, he's like, oh shit, was this my fault? I really hope the place I needed to deliver this pizza wasn't there.
Slightly on fire. Right, we're going to end the episode. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed these discussions on Commander Farsight. As we said, next month is going to be the Imperial Guard. So I hope that you're looking forward to that. I do have the mini that I need to build, but I'm super excited. I'm really excited for that, actually.
I like the Imperial Guard thing that you got.
Yeah, I have so many minis to paint. It's I need to catch up, so I'm going to work on that. I promise.
I am considering painting myself just as a bit of a off downtime hobby kind of painting.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all going to get Sheepy to paint one day, right?
Oh God.
Fire it off in the comments. What would you like Sheepy to paint?
I feel like they're just gonna say Dust Boys.
Yeah, Dust Boys, orcs. You like your orcs?
Yeah, orcs. I do like orcs.
I will have a think.
And
I will reply too.
when I did my tier list of 40k factions, Imperial Guard were on the top.
Really?
Yeah.
You could paint the same mini that I have got for the Imperial Guard.
I wouldn't start that.
Yeah, just start. It's fine. You've painted before.
I'd go with some Cadians or something if I was gonna do, just some regular troopers first.
Good luck with that. Skin tones.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We're gonna leave.
Yes.
We will see you next time.
Next time.
Bye.